Welcome back, everyone. I am David Shipley Alexander, and this is part 2 of my presentation about my personal connections to rotation. I am continuing on from last time, where I was sharing a number of experiences involving rotation, mainly from my childhood. Moving on, today I will be starting with my electric motor. Another personal connection to rotation occurred when I personally built a small electric motor in my 8th grade shop class. The assembled parts consisted of pieces of wood, steel, iron, and small coils wound by hand. I wound the coils as neatly as I possibly could in order that these coils could generate as much electromagnetic force as possible. At the moment of truth, a battery was connected to my motor, and it ran quite well. This led to a feeling of a job well done. How often does the broom handle get stuck through the spokes of our speeding bike by someone who we stuck the broom handle in their spokes? The thwarting of another's rotation brings the thwarting of ours, but we rarely connect it. Indeed, what goes around comes around. Sputnik. It was a major news story back in 1957 when the Russians launched Sputnik, the first artificial Earth satellite. The last stage of the rocket that launched the first Sputnik was actually quite visible. No optical aid was required. It was tumbling, that's rotation, so as the sunlight reflected off it, the sun not yet visible in the morning sky, it had the appearance of flashing a few seconds, then rather dim a few seconds, then flashing again, etc. Now, here's the personal connection. Most of the early years of my life, my dad was rather aloof to me. However, after Sputnik was launched, he would wake me before daylight, and both of us would go up to our attic window. We then lived on a Baltimore street named Southern Avenue. Open the window and watch the Sputnik rocket come into view, go flashing across the sky, and go out of view. A strange bond between us, but I was thankful for it. What comes around goes around. I would have liked to have had more of that special treatment from my dad, but he could only give me what I gave out in the past. Calculus. My high school education was at a public school, Baltimore Polytechnic Institute. Our 4-year curriculum of mathematics subjects started with plane geometry and beginning algebra, worked progressively through higher levels of mathematics, and concluded in our senior year with differential and integral calculus. The rotation connection is that calculus enables one to efficiently calculate parameters, for example, areas or volumes or trajectories of numerous objects, curved or linear, provided that the equation of the shape of that object or trajectory is known. To we, the students, the very word calculus carried the fear of God. I obtained some calculus books and tried to study ahead. So then, beginning calculus in my senior year, the first day was okay, even the first week, okay, the first month, likewise, and so on. Fear was gradually being replaced with a major feeling of accomplishment. As I put in a good work, overcoming my fear, what came around was the good results I enjoyed and not the fearful ones that my not-self wanted me to avoid by doing nothing. No prep, no hard work, just paralysis of failure. I learned that if I didn't prepare and work hard, my default fear and avoidance would bring failure around. Surely, what goes around comes around. Rotate to graduate. In my senior year of my college chemical engineering courses at Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, Maryland, I had to choose and conduct a relevant technical research project and write a report on it. Some core concepts of chemical engineering are fluid flow and heat transfer. My summer job prior to my senior year at Hopkins was working as a technician for a company then part of the Westinghouse Corporation, located about 10 miles south of Baltimore. What we were doing back then was developing and manufacturing early types of integrated circuit chips, as many as 4 or 8 transistors on a single small piece of a pure silicon wafer. Wow, goodbye vacuum tubes. Well, today, the last time I looked, the number of transistors on a single chip has surpassed 100 billion. That's billion with a B. For maximum production efficiency and to maintain the required ultra-high purity of the technology, back in the time I worked in it, I operated equipment which passed a specified mixture of gases over silicon wafers, which were laying on incandescent blocks of graphite and quartz tubes. My research project was to build a model of the industrial process but pass smoke in air over an electrically heated metal block in a 3-inch diameter Pyrex tube, and then photograph the rotation, there it is, of the smoke over the heated block to better understand the corresponding industrial process. The project led to a good report, and I graduated. Making chips. Starting work as an engineer in the semiconductor industry. After obtaining my BS in chemical engineering degree from Johns Hopkins University, I returned to Westinghouse as a process engineer. There were numerous process steps required to convert silicon wafers into silicon integrated circuits. Many of these required high temperature chemistry, and that's where my attention was being applied. Rotation was prevalent throughout these processes. One example was a motor generator, a single machine which converted 60 hertz electric power input to 10,000 hertz output. Electric power at 10,000 hertz was used in one of the high temperature reactors. Even though I went back to where I worked before, I was still a very young man in a young field. Little did I know that such a rapid advancement in chip technology would occur, that I could talk to each one of you today through a personal computer that could be viewed all over the world by someone on their personal computer. It is strange in this modern world that we live in now. If the average person doesn't have internet connection with the World Wide Web, either through a phone, a tablet, a laptop, or a PC, to that young man back at Westinghouse, this would be Buck Rogers' science fiction. But he would have enjoyed it because it's what his dreams were made out of. All of this set in motion by simply photographing swirling smoke. Lithium batteries. In the late 1970s, I worked as an engineer for a company slightly north of Baltimore, which was doing research and development of very high temperature rechargeable batteries. Rechargeable describes a charge-discharge cycle, and that can be thought of as a form of rotation. This company then started research of various types of lithium batteries. Metallic lithium back then looked like the potential wonder element for the battery industry. Now we are wiser. If one cell of a lithium battery has a runaway reaction, that is a fire, adjacent cells can be rapidly induced into burning or exploding, and lithium fires cannot be extinguished by any standard means because lithium reacts with all conventional fire extinguishing agents. I went from one cutting-edge industry, silicon chips, in their infancy, to the next which was lithium batteries, which were also in their infancy. Strange how these two things would come together and give us the ability to be like Dick Tracy, where we could walk down the street and talk to somebody in Singapore through our space-age watches, or some might call them cell phones. Strange how I would become involved with these two things that would come together and connect the whole world in real time. One might believe in past advanced civilizations where what I did before, I simply came back to do again. I think I am finished with this wheel of rebirth, though. It's one rotation I think I can let go of, but I must say, the return of calculus in the previous story was a nice touch. Solar cells. In 1980, I began employment as a process engineer at a company in the suburbs of Washington, D.C., which was manufacturing solar cells. Rotation was used in some of these manufacturing processes. That industry was promoted with over-the-top hype. Solar cells are powered by the sun. They need no fuel. They're getting cheaper all the time. Blah, blah, blah. The core resource problem is that the power in sunlight overhead at noon, with no clouds in the sky, is only about 93 watts per square foot. During night, it is, of course, 0. The conversion factor from power in sunlight to electric power out of standard photovoltaic solar cells is only about 20%. The main obstacle to this technology advancing is that in about 1979, various oil companies invested in all of the American companies manufacturing solar cells. I saw a way that one of the bottleneck process steps could be greatly modified and improved. I mentioned my idea to my boss. As a result of this, one of the higher level bosses in that company emphatically told me I was to mind my own business or else. As I have told people many times, this and other types of corruption is one of the major reasons that free energy is still not available to we the people. I would love for all of this corruption to be exposed and removed before I rotate out of this life. Once again, I found myself involved in those technologies that would be so important in the future, but the photovoltaic cells was a sheep that was put in the hands of a pack of wolves. And one day, what they have sown they will reap, and the wheel of rotation will take these lead weights off of the backs of mankind. Deadly rotation. In the late 1980s, I personally witnessed, near Gardner, Montana, a deadly form of rotation which could have killed or severely maimed a group of children. I lived in a rural area and was walking up a hill to see if I had received mail at the local post office. The weather was sunny and calm that day. There's a reason I state that. Several school teachers were seeing the young children, their students, seeming to be in grades approximately 1 to 3, and on a field trip, were carefully directed into the post office for a tour, something they could later discuss and write about. The children and their teachers entered the post office, and then all hell broke loose, literally. A mini tornado seemed to come out of nowhere, and immediately all kinds of debris, particularly long 2x4 boards, were picked up off of the ground and began whirling around at extremely high speed right above the very same path the children had walked upon to enter the post office. This lasted approximately a minute and then suddenly ended. And a little later, the children and their teachers inside the post office who were probably not fully aware of what had occurred outside emerged from the post office and went back down the hill. What had I witnessed? Well, we know that there are negative psychic mental energies which can actually influence material things. If it had not been for a slight shift in the timing, an act of God, there probably would have been an extremely bad outcome for those children and their teachers. Do I believe I witnessed an attempt by invisible dark forces attempting to kill innocent children and their teachers? Emphatically, yes. All of this may seem a bit off the wall, but if you know anything about DARPA, and there are many branches of research, especially the CIA's study on psychic powers, where Lyndon B. Johnson said, whoever controls the weather controls the world, and its contemporary development as HAARP technology, one only has to look at the miraculous standing hurricane over Jamaica, clearing the land of its miscreant population, making it more available and simple to obtain by an isolating, land-hungry power elite. One might think they are looking for an island once depopulated by this rotation to be able to ride out a worldwide cataclysm that they would love to induce. Population reduction has always been their agenda, and genocide has never bothered them. But I do think the joke is finally on them, because as surely as the sun sets, it will rise, and a new day will come with the rotation of the sun. Be not afraid, be not fooled, for God shall not be mocked, and all of that which is born shall surely die, as these ones play out their final cycles of to be or not to be. Thank you for following me through part 2 of my story about my personal connections to rotation. There will be a part 3, and I hope to see you there.